They called my daughter not family over turkey and cranberry sauce, so I stood up, wiped the gravy from my sleeve, and invited everyone to stay for dessert. The lawyer was already on the porch. The will had a clause none of them knew existed written for moments exactly like this. My mother-in-law's face went from smug to pale when she heard the doorbell ring at 7:15 p.m. She'd just sealed her own fate with witnesses at every chair. My name is Rachel Monroe, and I've learned that the worst betrayals happen when you're passing the mashed potatoes. The Hart family dining room smelled like butter and sage, that perfect Thanksgiving scent that's supposed to make you feel grateful and warm. Instead, I felt the chill creeping up my spine as I watched my mother-in-law, Evelyn, hold court at the head of the table. She'd claimed that spot the moment Richard, my father-in-law, passed away last summer. Now, she wielded the carving knife like a scepter, slicing through turkey breast while slicing through people with her words. "Pass the cranberry sauce. Would you?" Aunt Margaret asked, her voice cutting through the football game playing on the TV in the next room. The Cowboys were winning. Apparently, Uncle Tom kept craning his neck to see the score. I shifted 4-month-old Lila in my arms, her tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb. She was drowsy from her 6:30 p.m. feeding, content in that milk-drunk way babies get. Her dark hair, Evan's hair, stuck up in small tufts. She had his nose, too, that distinctive heart nose that Evelyn was so proud of on her son. "She's getting big," Cousin Janet observed, leaning over to peek at Lila. "How much does she weigh now?" 14 pounds, I said, adjusting the burp cloth on my shoulder. A spot of sweet potato had already found its way onto my sleeve. "She's in the 75th percentile. Evelyn's fork clinked against her plate. The sound was deliberate, sharp. "Well, some babies are just hardier than others. Different stock, you know." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Evan, sitting to my left, focused intently on buttering his roll. He'd been doing that a lot lately, finding fascinating things to study whenever his mother started one of her campaigns. "Mom," he said quietly, not looking up from his bread. "What, I'm just making conversation." Evelyn's smile could have frozen wine. "After all, we don't really know much about Rachel's family medical history, do we? These things matter for children. I'd worked at Harborline Analytics for 6 years. I'd learned to read data patterns, spot anomalies, identify when numbers were trying to tell you something was wrong. Right now, every instinct I had was screaming that this wasn't random needling. This was targeted, planned. "My family medical history is fine," I said evenly. "The pediatrician has all the records she needs." "Oh, I'm sure she does." Evelyn took a sip of her wine, her third glass, since we'd sat down at 5:45 p.m. But paperwork is just paperwork, isn't it? Blood is what really matters. Real blood, heart blood. Uncle Dennis coughed uncomfortably. Aunt Margaret suddenly found her green beans fascinating. "That baby," Evelyn continued, her voice rising slightly, "isn't family, not really. Anyone with eyes can see she doesn't have the heart features. The heart legacy isn't for just anyone who happens to mother." Evan's voice was sharper now, but still, he wouldn't look at her, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't look at our daughter. "Oh, please, Evan, don't be naive. That girl trapped you, and now she thinks she can waltz in here and claim what Richard built, what our family built over 3 generations. Evelyn's face was flushed now, whether from wine or anger. I couldn't tell. "That baby isn't a heart. She isn't blood. She isn't family." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Janet's teenage daughter, Brittany, had her phone out, recording her grandmother's tirade, probably for TikTok later, thinking this was just family drama content. She'd become an accidental court reporter. I stood up slowly, still holding Lila. The gravy from my sleeve dripped onto the ivory tablecloth, the one Evelyn had bragged about buying in Paris. "You're right about one thing. Evelyn," I said, my voice steady as a balance sheet. "Blood does matter, and lucky for us. Richard thought so too." I looked around at the table, meeting every pair of eyes except Evan's. He was still studying that roll like it held the secrets of the universe. Everyone please, stay for dessert. We have pumpkin pie, apple crumble, and… I smiled. The kind of smile I'd learned in conference rooms when I was about to present devastating quarterly reports. Something special. There's someone joining us who's been waiting outside. They have something Richard wanted you all to hear. Something about blood and family and who really belongs at this table. The doorbell rang at exactly 7:15 p.m. Evelyn's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Nobody moved. Well, I said, still standing, Lila beginning to fuss against my shoulder. Aren't you going to get that? Evelyn, it's your house, after all, for now. Evelyn's knuckles were white around her wine glass. I'm not expecting anyone. No, I agreed, bouncing Lila gently. You weren't? Evan finally looked up from his roll, confusion clouding his features. Rachel, what's going on? Your mother was just explaining how our daughter isn't family, I said, keeping my voice light, conversational. I thought we should make sure everyone's clear on what that means, legally speaking. Aunt Margaret shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should all just calm down. Oh, I'm perfectly calm, Evelyn interrupted, standing now too, her chair scraping against the hardwood. This is my house, my son's house, and I won't have some analyst from nowhere telling me who belongs at my table. Richard's table, I corrected. Richard's house, Richard's legacy. Funny how quickly you forget whose name is actually on all those documents. The doorbell rang a third time. Someone should really get that, Cousin Janet whispered, but she didn't move either. The football game droned on in the background. Someone had scored. The crowd was roaring. Evelyn laughed, harsh and bitter. You think you were special to him? Richard was soft, sentimental. He would have said anything to keep the peace in his final months. Is that what you told yourself when you started moving money from the family trust? I asked. The room went silent except for the TV. Even Lila stopped fussing. Oh, did you think I wouldn't notice, data analyst? Remember, I see patterns, like $40,000 administrative fees that coincidentally match the down payment on your new Mercedes? How dare you! Or the $50,000 in estate management costs that went straight to covering the Hart Home and Garden losses, the ones you had Evan co-sign for without telling him they were already in default. Evan's head snapped up. What, Mom? You said the business was fine. It is fine. Evelyn's voice cracked. It just needs restructuring. Family businesses go through rough patches. Family helps family. Real family. There's that word again, I said. Family. You keep using it like a weapon, like it's yours to define. Uncle Dennis cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, I said firmly. Evelyn wanted to do this publicly. At Thanksgiving dinner, in front of everyone. So let's do this properly. Brittany, you're still recording, right? The teenager nodded, eyes wide, phone steady. Good, because I want everyone to be very clear about what Evelyn just said, multiple times, that my daughter, her granddaughter, isn't family, isn't a heart, doesn't belong here. She doesn't? Evelyn exploded. You trapped my son with that pregnancy. Don't think I didn't notice the timing. Don't think I haven't heard the rumors about you and that supervisor at your company. Mom. Evan stood abruptly, his chair falling backward. That's enough. Oh, now you defend her. Now you find your spine. Evelyn rounded on him. Where was this courage when she convinced your father to change things, when she whispered in his ear during his chemo treatments? I held his hand. I said quietly. While you were at the country club, I drove him to every appointment at 8:30 while you had your tennis lessons. I made him laugh when the pain was so bad he wanted to give up. And yes, we talked. About family, about what that really means. The doorbell had stopped ringing. Instead, there was a knock. Firm. Official. The paternity test you're about to bring up. I continued. The one you've been hinting at all evening. Evan took one. 2 months ago. Through a certified lab. The results are in the safe upstairs, along with some other interesting documents. including the codicil Richard added to his will in September, 3 weeks before he died. Evelyn's face had gone from red to white. What codicil? The one he had witnessed by his oncologist and 2 nurses. The one he specifically scheduled for the Thursday after Labor Day, when you were in Martha's Vineyard. The one that addresses, very specifically, what happens when a family member publicly denounces or disparages his grandchildren. Another knock. Louder. You're bluffing. Am I? I walked to the dining room entrance, Lila awake now and looking around with curious eyes. There's only one way to find out. But Evelyn, before I open that door, I want you to think very carefully. You just said, in front of 8 witnesses, one of whom is recording, that Lila isn't family. You said it multiple times. You can't take that back. I paused at the doorway, looking back at the table. The cranberry sauce sat untouched. The turkey was getting cold. Thousands of dollars of food on a table where my daughter had just been disowned. Last chance, I said. Apologize. Take it back. Say Lila is your granddaughter, your family, and that you were wrong. Or I open this door, and we find out exactly what Richard thought about people who would hurt his grandchild. Evelyn straightened her spine, lifted her chin. I said what I said. That baby is not a heart. I smiled sadly. You're right. She's so much more than that. I opened the door. Allison Keene stood on the porch in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage. Behind her, I could see 2 figures neighbors from down the street, the Pattersons, who Richard had specifically named. A briefcase sat at her feet, and her expression was professionally neutral, the kind lawyers perfect when they're about to destroy someone's life. Mrs. Monroe, she said, nodding. 7:15 p.m., as agreed. But before I could respond, before anyone could process what was happening, I need to explain how we got here, how 3 months of careful planning had led to this moment. It started in August, 2 weeks after Richard's funeral. I'd been going through our family finances a habit from work, checking patterns, monitoring flows. That's when I found the first discrepancy. A transfer from the Hart Family Trust, authorized by Evelyn as executor, labeled funeral expenses. Except the funeral had been prepaid by Richard years ago. I'd seen the receipt. I started digging. Screenshot after screenshot, building a folder on my laptop labeled recipes in case Evan looked. $20,000 here for estate lawyers, $30,000 there for property maintenance, all flowing into accounts that traced back to Evelyn or the failing garden center she'd pushed Evan to co-sign for. The text messages were worse. I found them by accident when Evan left his phone charging in the kitchen. His mother, instructing him to sign documents without reading them, telling him not to mention certain transactions to me, calling me that woman and suggesting I might not stick around once Richard's money was divided. You need to be smart about this. Evan. One message read, She's after the money. Once she has what she wants, she'll take that baby and leave. We need to protect family assets from her, not for her. The irony was breathtaking. She was stealing from the estate while accusing me of being a gold digger. But the real shock came in September, when I was cleaning out Richard's home office, hidden behind a false panel in his desk drawer, the kind of hiding spot a man dying of cancer creates when he knows vultures are circling. I found a medical report, Evan's medical report, from when he was 16. Measles had left him with an extremely low sperm count. The chances of him fathering a child naturally were less than 2%. Richard had known this for 18 years. He'd kept it secret, even from Evan. But he'd known. Which meant when I got pregnant, when Evelyn started her whisper campaign about infidelity, Richard had known the truth his son had beaten 1,000,000-to-1 odds. Lila was a miracle. His miracle granddaughter. The sticky note attached to the report, in Richard's shaky handwriting, said simply, For Rachel when she needs it. The blood of my blood. The heart of my heart. Protect her from them. That's when I'd called Allison Keene. She'd been Richard's lawyer for 15 years, but Evelyn hadn't known about the last visits. The private meetings at the hospital, arranged through his oncologist. The codicil drawn up with specific triggers. designed to protect not just Lila's inheritance, but her dignity, her place in the family. Richard was very specific. Allison had told me in her Riverton office, a 3-hour drive I'd hidden by claiming a pediatrician appointment. He knew Evelyn would challenge your daughter's legitimacy. He wanted consequences, immediate, public, and irreversible. The investigation into Evelyn's financial misconduct had taken 6 weeks. A forensic accountant, quiet, thorough, expensive, had traced every dollar. The pattern was clear, systematic looting disguised as estate management. But that alone wasn't enough. Richard wanted the moral crime punished alongside the financial one. The trigger has to be public denouncement, Allison had explained, in front of family witnesses. Recorded, if possible. She has to say your daughter isn't family, isn't a heart, doesn't belong. The words matter, the intent matters, and it has to be voluntary, not goaded or tricked. She'll do it, I'd said. At Thanksgiving, it's her stage. She won't be able to resist. And she hadn't. Now, as I stood in the doorway between past planning and future execution, holding my daughter while the lawyer waited on the porch, I thought about Richard's last words to me. It had been 3:20 a.m., and Evan had finally fallen asleep in the hospital chair. Richard had squeezed my hand with what little strength remained. She'll come for you, he'd whispered. For Lila. She came for Evan's college girlfriend, for his first fiancé. Run them off with rumors and cruelty. But you're stronger. And now you'll have the tools. Why didn't you stop her before? I'd asked. Too sick, too tired, too late for me. His eyes had flickered toward Evan. Too weak, maybe, but not too late for Lila. The papers are signed. The trap is set. Just let her be herself. The memory faded as Allison stepped into the foyer, the November cold following her in. Behind me, I heard chairs scraping, voices murmuring. The dining room tableau was breaking apart, but it was too late. Everything was already in motion. Shall we begin? Allison asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. I believe we have business to discuss regarding the estate of Richard James Hart, and specifically, the codicil dated September 10th of this year. I heard Evelyn's wine glass shatter on the floor. The Pattersons filed in behind Allison, looking uncomfortable but determined. Bob Patterson caught my eye and nodded. Richard had helped them through their own legal troubles years ago. They understood debts and loyalty. This is ridiculous, Evelyn said, glass shards crunching under her heels as she strode toward us. You can't just barge into my home. Actually, Allison interrupted smoothly. I'm the executor of Richard's estate, as designated in his updated will. You were informed of this change in September. Mrs. Hart, you chose not to attend the reading. I was grieving. You were in Martha's Vineyard. I have the receipts. Allison set her briefcase on the console table, clicking it open with practiced precision. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the tense foyer. Everyone had crowded in now, Evan hovering uncertainly between his mother and me, the cousins and aunts and uncles forming a semicircle like an amphitheater audience. Before we proceed, Allison said, pulling out a tablet, I need to establish some facts. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, you've been neighbors of the Hart family for how long? 22 years, Bob answered. And you agreed to serve as witnesses tonight because Richard asked us to before he passed, Mrs. Patterson said softly. He said there might be a family dispute that would need honest witnesses. People who couldn't be accused of taking sides. Allison nodded and turned to Brittany. Young lady, I understand you've been recording this evening's dinner conversation. Brittany looked at her grandmother nervously, then at me. Yeah, for TikTok. But I haven't posted anything. Perfect. Please don't stop recording. In fact, could you email the existing video to this address? Allison handed her a business card. This is all perfectly legal. Ohio is a one-party consent state for recordings, and you're a party to this conversation. What the hell is this about? Uncle Dennis demanded. Allison pulled out a thick folder. This is about the codicil to Richard Hart's last will and testament, executed on September 10th at 2:45 p.m. At Riverside Methodist Hospital, witnessed by Dr. Marcia Hendricks and nurses Patricia Gomez and Jennifer Liu. She opened the folder, revealing several documents with raised seals. The codicil specifically addresses the distribution of the Hart estate in the event that any beneficiary publicly denounces, disparages, or disowns Richard's grandchildren. The room went silent except for Lila's soft cooing. I shifted her to my other arm, feeling the weight of everyone's stares. Richard was very specific. Allison continued. He wrote, and I quote, "Family is not just blood, but love, acceptance, and protection. Anyone who would deny my grandchildren their place in this family has already removed themselves from it." "This is absurd," Evelyn sputtered. "You can't retroactively punish someone for speaking the truth." The truth. Allison's eyebrows rose. "Would you like to see the paternity test results that Richard had conducted in August? The one that confirms with 99.9% certainty that Evan Hart is Lila Monroe's biological father." Evan's head snapped up. "What, Mom? You said—" "Or perhaps," Allison continued, pulling out another document, "you'd prefer to discuss the forensic accounting report that details the $437,000 you've inappropriately transferred from the Hart Family Trust since Richard's death." The number hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Aunt Margaret gasped. Uncle Tom turned off the football game. "Every transaction is documented," Allison said, her voice cutting through the shock, "including the $50,000 transferred to Hart Home and Garden 2 days before it declared bankruptcy, the $60,000 in legal fees paid to a lawyer who doesn't exist, the $40,000 in maintenance for a property that was sold in 2019. I was managing the estate. You were embezzling from your grandchild," Allison corrected, "because yes, Lila Monroe is Richard's grandchild, his blood, his heir, and as of 7:18 p.m. tonight, when you publicly disowned her in front of 8 witnesses, she became his primary heir." Allison pulled out the main document, holding it up so everyone could see the official seals. The codicil states that if any beneficiary publicly denies the legitimacy or family status of Richard's grandchildren, their entire portion of the estate transfers immediately to a trust for those grandchildren. No appeals, no grace period, no exceptions. "You set me up," Evelyn whispered, her face ashen. "No," I said quietly, speaking for the first time since opening the door. "Richard set you up. He knew exactly who you were. He knew what you'd do, and he made sure that when you did it, when you tried to hurt his granddaughter the way you hurt him by ignoring his dying wishes, there would be consequences. The house," Evelyn's voice cracked, "transfers to the Lila Monroe Trust, with Rachel as trustee," Allison confirmed. "The vacation property in Maple Ridge as well. All investment accounts, the classic car collection, the art, everything except $10,000. Richard wanted you to have something to start over with. He wasn't cruel, just protective." "Evan gets nothing?" Uncle Dennis asked. "Evan retains his 20% share," Allison said, looking at my husband with something like sympathy. "Unless he participated in the denouncement. Did you, Mr. Hart, did you agree with your mother that your daughter isn't family?" Everyone turned to look at Evan. He stood frozen, his face pale, eyes darting between his mother and our daughter. He started, then stopped. "I didn't. I never said." "Silence isn't participation," Allison said gently, "but it's also not protection. Your share remains, but with conditions. You must formally acknowledge Lila as your daughter and heir, publicly. Now." The room held its breath. Evan looked at our daughter in my arms, and for the first time all evening, maybe for the first time in months, really looked at her. Lila gazed back with those dark eyes that were exactly like his. The Hart nose that Evelyn had always been so proud of, unmistakable even in her tiny face. "She's my daughter," he said quietly. Then louder, stronger. Lila is my daughter, my family, my blood. You spineless! Evelyn started, but Allison raised a hand. Mrs. Hart, I need to ask you something officially. For the record, earlier this evening, at approximately 7:12 p.m., did you state that Lila Monroe was not family, not a Hart, and didn't belong at this table? I want my lawyer. That's your right, of course, but the witnesses heard what they heard. The video exists, and the codicil has already been triggered. Allison pulled out her tablet again. Brittany, have you sent that video? Just did, the teenager confirmed, looking both thrilled and terrified by the drama. Allison tapped her screen a few times, then held it up. Evelyn's voice filled the room, clear and damning. That baby isn't family. Not really. That baby isn't a Hart. She isn't blood. She isn't family. The repetition was devastating. No ambiguity, no room for interpretation. Furthermore, Allison continued, setting down the tablet, there's the matter of the criminal investigation. Criminal. Uncle Tom finally spoke up. What criminal investigation? Embezzlement is a felony in Ohio when it exceeds $100,000, Allison explained. The forensic accountant has already submitted their preliminary findings to the prosecutor's office. Mrs. Hart, you have two choices. You can cooperate fully with returning the misappropriated funds and accept the terms of the codicil, or you can fight this and face potential imprisonment of up to 10 years. Evelyn swayed on her feet. Evan moved toward her instinctively, but stopped halfway, caught between loyalty and betrayal. There's more, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. Everyone turned to me. Tell them about the Hart Home and Garden liability. Allison. The lawyer nodded grimly. The $50,000 Mrs. Hart transferred to the garden center was used as collateral for a larger loan. When the business declared bankruptcy, that loan defaulted. The creditors are now pursuing personal assets. However, since the money was stolen from the trust, the liability remains with whoever signed for it. Mom, Evan breathed, the full weight of betrayal hitting him. You said it was just a formality. You said the business was solid. I was trying to save it for you, for the family legacy. No, I said, stepping forward, Lila warm against my chest. You were trying to control it. There's a difference between preserving a legacy and strangling it. Richard knew that. That's why he changed everything. Allison pulled out one final document. So, this is a cease and desist order, already filed with the county clerk. Mrs. Hart, you have 72 hours to vacate the premises. The house is now held in trust for Lila Monroe. You may take your personal belongings, clothing, jewelry that wasn't part of the Hart family collection, personal photographs. Everything else stays. Where am I supposed to go? Evelyn's voice had gone small, defeated. Richard actually thought of that too, Allison said, her tone softening slightly. He maintained a rental property on Sycamore Street, a 2-bedroom condo. It's paid off, taxes covered for 2 years. You can live there, but the deed is in the trust's name. You're a tenant, not an owner. The cruelty of it, or perhaps the mercy, depending on your perspective, was breathtaking. Richard had stripped her of power but not shelter, removed her throne but not thrown her to the streets. You planned all this, Evelyn said, looking at me with pure hatred. You manipulated a dying man. No, I said simply. I protected my daughter from someone who would hurt her. Richard gave me the tools, but you pulled the trigger. You chose to say those words. You chose to steal that money. You chose to treat your granddaughter like an outsider. Every choice was yours. Bob Patterson cleared his throat. We should probably sign those witness statements now. Ms. Keene. As the Pattersons moved to the dining room table with Allison to sign documents, the rest of the family stood frozen, processing the complete reversal of power that had just occurred. The empire Evelyn had thought she controlled had evaporated in less than 15 minutes. Rachel, Evan said quietly, approaching me slowly, as if I might run. Did you know? This whole time, I knew Richard loved our daughter, I replied. I knew he wanted to protect her, and I knew your mother would show her true colors eventually. All I did was make sure there were consequences when she did. Can we talk privately? I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who'd stayed silent while his mother attacked our child, who'd studied bread rolls instead of defending his family, who'd signed documents without reading them because his mother told him to. We'll talk, I said finally, but not tonight. Tonight, you need to decide where you're sleeping, this house or your mother's new condo. The question hung between us like a blade. Behind him, Evelyn was pulling out her phone with shaking hands, probably calling whatever lawyer would answer at 7:45 p.m. on Thanksgiving. Around us, the relatives were starting to murmur, choosing sides, recalculating alliances, but I didn't care about any of them. I looked down at Lila, who had fallen asleep despite the chaos, trusting completely that she was safe in my arms. "Happy Thanksgiving, baby girl," I whispered. "Welcome to your house." Allison returned from the dining room with the signed witness statements, her heels clicking against the hardwood with the precision of a countdown timer. The Pattersons followed, looking relieved to have completed their part. But Allison wasn't done. "Now," she said, setting her briefcase on the coffee table with deliberate ceremony. "We need to address the immediate transfers. Mrs. Hart, I'll need your keys." "My keys." Evelyn's voice cracked. "House keys, car keys for any vehicles registered to the estate, keys to the lake house, the storage units, and the safety deposit boxes." Allison pulled out a manila envelope. "Also, the passwords to all estate-related financial accounts, which you're legally required to provide. This is happening too fast." Actually, it's happening exactly as Richard planned. He was very specific about the timeline. Immediate transfer upon triggering the codicil. No delays, no negotiations. Allison turned to me. "Rachel, as trustee, you'll need to sign these documents." I shifted Lila to one arm and took the pen. My signature flowed across multiple pages while everyone watched. Each stroke felt like justice being written into existence. "The Hartford Legacy Trust for Lila Monroe," Allison announced as I signed, "will hold approximately $4.2 million in assets, including the real estate. The investment portfolio alone generates roughly $200,000 annually in dividends." Janet gasped. Even I hadn't known the exact numbers. "Additionally," Allison continued, pulling out a bank card, "this is the trust's operational account. It currently holds $300,000 in liquid funds for immediate expenses. The PIN is Lila's birth date." Evelyn made a sound like a wounded animal. "That's my money. I managed those investments for 30 years. "Richard managed them," Allison corrected. "You spent them? There's a difference. Speaking of which..." She pulled out another document. "This is a forensic accounting of every transaction you've made since Richard's death. Every transfer, every check, every wire. You have 30 days to repay $437,000 to the trust, or criminal charges will be filed. I don't have that kind of money. Then you'll need to liquidate assets. Your Mercedes, for instance. Your jewelry collection. The country club membership that Richard never wanted but you insisted on. The FBI takes financial crimes very seriously. Mrs. Hart, I'd suggest you do the same." A knock at the door interrupted the proceedings. Allison checked her watch, 8:05 p.m., and smiled slightly. "Right on time." She opened the door to reveal a man in a locksmith uniform. "Ma'am, you called for emergency lock service." "Yes," Allison said, then turned to me. "Rachel, as the trustee, you need to authorize this." I understood immediately. "Please change all the locks, every door. The garage codes too. How long will it take?" "About an hour for everything," the locksmith said. "I've got my crew in the van." "Mom, you can't be serious." Evan finally found his voice. "It's Thanksgiving night. It's her home." "Was," I corrected. "It was her home. Now it's held in trust for our daughter, your daughter, who your mother just disowned." More car doors slammed outside. Through the window, I could see 2 more vans pulling up a security company and what looked like a cleaning service. "You coordinated all of this," Uncle Dennis said, understanding dawning on his face. "This whole dinner was a trap." "No," I said, meeting his gaze steadily. Dinner was dinner. The trap was set months ago by a dying man who knew his family better than they knew themselves. All I did was serve the turkey and wait for Evelyn to be herself. Allison's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. "Perfect. The banks have confirmed the account freezes. Mrs. Hart, your access to all Hart estate accounts has been terminated as of 8:07 p.m. The credit cards have been canceled. The only account you can access is your personal checking, which currently holds—" She checked her phone again. $1,200. "You can't leave me with nothing. Richard left you with $10,000 and a free place to live." Allison reminded her. "That's $10,000 more than you left for Lila in your version of the family." The security team entered, their supervisor approaching me directly. "Mrs. Monroe, we're here to reset the entire system. We'll need to create new codes, new user profiles. Your mother-in-law's biometric data will be deleted from all scanners." "Do it," I said. Evelyn turned to the relatives, looking for support, for outrage, for anything, but they all stepped back, creating distance from the explosion. Nobody wanted to be caught in the fallout. "Evan," she pleaded, "your father wouldn't want this." "He loved me." "He did love you," I agreed before Evan could respond. "That's why he gave you the condo and the $10,000. But he loved his granddaughter more, and he knew God, how he knew that you would try to destroy her place in this family the moment he was gone. She's 4 months old. She doesn't need millions of dollars." "No," I agreed. "But she needs protection from people who would deny her existence. Richard couldn't protect Evan from you. Look what that silence cost. But he could protect Lila. And he did." Brittany, still recording everything, whispered, "This is better than any reality show." Her mother shushed her, but she wasn't wrong. The complete dismantling of Evelyn Hart's empire was happening in real time, with an audience. On Thanksgiving, Richard had probably planned that too. Maximum witnesses meant no ability to revise history later. "The moving truck will be here tomorrow at 9 a.m., Allison informed Evelyn. "You'll be supervised while you pack your personal belongings. Anything questionable will be photographed and evaluated. Family heirlooms stay with the family Lila's family." "I am family," Evelyn screamed. "No," I said quietly, adjusting Lila against my shoulder. "You were family until 7:12 p.m. tonight. When you decided my daughter wasn't, family is a choice, Evelyn, and you made yours." The locksmith's drill started whirring in the background, the sound of one life ending and another beginning. The old locks, Evelyn's locks, were being removed, replaced with something new, something that would keep my daughter safe. Where's my son supposed to go? Evelyn turned her desperation toward Evan again. "You're throwing his mother out but keeping him. How does that work?" Everyone looked at Evan, waiting for his answer. He stood in the middle of the room, pulled between worlds, between loyalties, between the family he was born into and the family he'd created. The room held its breath as Evan stood there, frozen between his mother and his family. Then Evelyn made her final, fatal mistake. She lunged, not at me, at the documents on the coffee table. Her hands clawed for the papers Allison had spread out, maybe thinking she could destroy them, maybe just acting on pure rage. The wine she'd consumed all evening didn't help her coordination. She stumbled, knocking over the table, sending papers flying. "My house, my money, my family." She screamed, grabbing for Brittany's phone. "Stop recording, delete it all." The teenager jumped back, clutching her phone. Evelyn's hand caught the edge of it, and in the struggle, she struck Brittany across the face, not hard, but enough to leave a red mark. "That's assault," Bob Patterson said immediately. I saw it. We all saw it. The front door opened again. This time, it wasn't a locksmith or security. Chief David Brennan of the Willow Creek Police stood in the doorway, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. Behind him, a younger officer held a clipboard. "Evening, folks," Chief Brennan said calmly. "Ms. Keene called, said there might be a situation requiring supervision during an estate transfer. Looks like she was right." "David." Evelyn straightened, trying to summon her country club authority. "This is a family matter. Not when you're assaulting minors and destroying legal documents." "It's not," he replied. "Brittany, you okay?" The teenager nodded, her hand on her cheek. "I got it all on video, the whole thing." "Good. Email that to the station. Would you—" "Evidence preservation?" Chief Brennan turned to Evelyn. "Mrs. Hart, I'm going to need you to step outside while we sort this out. You can't arrest me in my own home." "Actually," Allison interjected, pulling out her phone, "as of 8:14 p.m., the property transfer is complete. The deed has been electronically filed with the county. This is legally the property of the Lila Monroe Trust. Mrs. Hart is now trespassing. Additionally," the chief continued, "there's the matter of the assault, attempted destruction of legal documents, and—" he looked at his clipboard, "a preliminary investigation into financial crimes that the prosecutor's office asked us to keep an eye on." Evelyn's face went from red to white to gray. She swayed, and for a moment, I thought she might faint. Then she grabbed the nearest thing, a crystal vase Richard had bought for their anniversary, and hurled it at the wall. It shattered spectacularly, sending shards across the hardwood. "That's destruction of property." Chief Brennan sighed. "Mrs. Hart, I'm going to have to place you under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." "No," Evelyn screamed, backing away. "Evan, tell them this is wrong." Evan took a step forward, and for a heartbeat, I wondered if he would choose her, if 34 years of manipulation would win over 4 months of fatherhood. Then he spoke, his voice steady and clear. "Chief Brennan, my mother has been drinking heavily. She assaulted a minor and destroyed property that belongs to my daughter's trust. Please do your job." The betrayal in Evelyn's eyes was absolute. "You worthless after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done to me," Evan corrected. "Dad knew. He knew what you were, what you'd do. That's why he protected Lila. That's why he protected Rachel. The only person he couldn't protect was me. And that stops tonight." Chief Brennan moved forward with the cuffs. "Mrs. Hart, please turn around. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." She tried to run a desperate, pathetic attempt to get to the back door, but the security team was there, blocking her path. The cleaning crew stood in the kitchen doorway, wide-eyed witnesses to the complete collapse of Evelyn Hart's empire. The cuffs clicked with a sound like finality. "The prosecutor will probably release her on her own recognizance," Chief Brennan told Allison, "but she'll need to appear Monday morning for arraignment. The assault charge is minor, but with the financial crimes investigation—" "We understand," Allison said. "We'll be pressing full charges for the assault and the property damage. The financial crimes are a separate matter, but we'll cooperate fully with that investigation." As they led Evelyn out, she turned back one last time, not to look at Evan or me, but at Lila, sleeping peacefully through the chaos. "That child destroyed everything," she hissed. "No," I said, standing straighter, my daughter warm against my chest. "That child revealed everything. There's a difference." The door closed behind them. The sound of the police car driving away faded into the night. The relatives began to scatter some murmuring excuses, others just fleeing the scene. Within minutes, only the workers, Allison, Evan, and I remained. "The locks will be done within the hour," the locksmith reported. "We'll leave you with 5 sets of keys." 2 sets, I corrected. 1 for me, 1 for the backup in the lawyer's office. I looked at Evan. He understood. He wasn't getting keys. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Rachel, he said quietly. Can we? Tomorrow. I cut him off. Tonight. You need to decide. Your mother will be released in a few hours. She'll need someone to pick her up from the station, someone to help her pack tomorrow, someone to stand by her. I paused. Or you can stay here and figure out how to be the father Lila deserves. But you can't do both. Not anymore. He looked around the house, his childhood home, now his daughter's inheritance. The broken crystal still glittered on the floor. The Thanksgiving dinner sat cold and abandoned on the table. The pie no one would eat. The family that no longer existed. I'll stay, he said finally. If you'll let me. That's not my decision, I said. It's Lila's. And she won't be able to make it for years. Until then, you earn your place here. Every day. Starting now. Allison gathered her papers, now officially filed and binding. Rachel, the trust documents give you full control. The house, the investments, everything. Evan's 20% is separate but conditional on his cooperation. If you need anything, we'll be fine. I said. Richard made sure of that. As the locksmith's drill continued its work and the security team reset every code, I walked to the window where Richard used to stand, looking out at his garden. The November night was cold and clear. Somewhere, Evelyn was being processed at the police station. Somewhere, relatives were gossiping about what they'd witnessed. But here, in what was now Lila's house, there was finally peace. Happy Thanksgiving, Richard, I whispered to the window. We did it. By 9:30 p.m., the house was transformed. New locks gleamed on every door. The security system hummed with fresh codes. The broken crystal had been swept away. The abandoned dinner cleared. The table reset as if waiting for a different family to gather. Allison had left copies of everything: deeds, bank statements, trust documents in a neat stack on Richard's desk. The locksmith handed me the new keys with a small ceremony, as if he understood he was passing over more than just metal. The cleaning crew had even rescued the pies, wrapping them carefully for the refrigerator. Mrs. and Monroe, the security supervisor said, showing me the new control panel. Your biometrics are now the primary. We've set up alerts that will notify both you and Ms. Keene if anyone attempts unauthorized entry. The cameras are all functional and backing up to the cloud. Evan sat on the couch, holding Lila for the first time all evening. Really holding her. Not just the performative touches for family photos. She'd woken up hungry, and he'd prepared her bottle while I dealt with the contractors. It was the most parental thing I'd seen him do in weeks. Her college fund, he said suddenly. Dad mentioned something about a college fund separate from the trust. 500,000, I confirmed. In a 529 plan. It's been growing since the day we told him I was pregnant. He knew then about everything. He knew enough. He knew Evelyn would never accept Lila. He knew you'd struggle to stand up to her. He knew I'd fight, but I'd need weapons. I sat down across from him, exhausted but victorious. So he gave them to me. The medical report, Evan said quietly. About my condition. You knew. Richard left it for me to find. He wanted me to know that he knew Lila was legitimately yours, that the miracle of her existence meant everything to him. Evan's eyes filled with tears. I should have protected you both. Should have stood up to her months ago. Yes, I agreed simply. You should have. We sat in silence while Lila finished her bottle. Outside, November wind rattled the windows that now belonged to her trust. The grandfather clock, now her grandfather clock, chimed 10 p. What happens now? Evan asked. Now you decide who you want to be, I said. Your mother will need someone when she gets out. She'll spin this story, play the victim, try to gather allies. She'll promise you things money she doesn't have. Forgiveness she won't mean. A relationship that will always come with conditions. Or you can stay here and learn to be Lila's father. Real father. Not just the man who contributed DNA, but the one who stands up for her, protects her, Teaches her that she's worth fighting for. Can I stay? In the guest room. For now. We'll take it day by day. I stood, taking Lila from him. But Evan, understand this if you ever, even once, make her feel the way your mother made her feel tonight. You're gone. No second chances, no explanations. Gone. He nodded, understanding the terms. I want to be better. I want to be the father Dad was to me before Mom. Changed him. Richard never changed, I said. He just got tired, and then he got sick. But he used his last strength to make sure this happened, to make sure Lila would never have to feel unwelcome in her own family. My phone buzzed, a text from Allison. Evelyn posted bail. Someone named Margaret picked her up. Thought you should know. So Aunt Margaret had chosen a side. There would be others. The family would split, fracture along lines of loyalty and self-interest. But that was tomorrow's problem. I'm going to put Lila to bed, I said. In her nursery, in her house. I climbed the stairs, each step feeling like a victory. The nursery Richard had helped me design, with its soft yellow walls and constellation nightlight, welcomed us. I settled into the rocking chair he'd bought, the one Evelyn had criticized as too expensive for something temporary. Nothing about Lila was temporary. She was permanent, protected, provided for. As I rocked her to sleep, I thought about Richard's last coherent words to me, the day before he slipped into the final coma. The papers are signed. The trap is set. Let her be herself, and she'll lose everything. He'd known exactly how this Thanksgiving would go. He'd probably pictured it during those long chemo sessions, Evelyn's cruelty, the family's shock, the complete reversal of power. He'd given me a script, and I'd played my part perfectly. Your grandfather loved you so much, I whispered to Lila as her eyes fluttered closed. He made sure you'd never have to fight for your place in this world. It's already yours. Downstairs. I heard Evan moving around, maybe cleaning up the last remnants of the evening's chaos. He had a long road ahead if he wanted to earn his place in our lives, but at least he was trying. My phone lit up with notifications. Brittany had posted her video, edited, dramatic, already going viral. Grandmother disowns baby at Thanksgiving, loses everything. The comments were pouring in, thousands of strangers witnessing Evelyn's downfall. Good. Let the world see what happens when you deny a child their birthright. I looked out the nursery window at the same stars Richard had watched during his sleepless nights. Somewhere out there, Evelyn was probably raging to Aunt Margaret, plotting her return, planning her revenge, but it didn't matter. The fortress Richard built for his granddaughter was impregnable, legal, binding, absolute. The trust fund would grow. The house would shelter her. The love Richard couldn't give in person would surround her in protection and provision, and I would make sure she knew that she was wanted, was family, was worthy everything Evelyn had tried to deny. Sweet dreams, baby girl, I whispered, placing Lila in her crib. Welcome home. The grandfather clock chimed 11 p.m. Thanksgiving was almost over. But for Lila Monroe, protected by her grandfather's love and her mother's courage, life was just beginning. Everything Richard had built, everything he'd protected, everything he'd salvaged from Evelyn's greed, it was all Lila's now. And that was justice enough for one Thanksgiving. Thank you for listening to this story of family, betrayal, and ultimate justice. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Rachel's position? Let me know in the comments.